What's up, Leafs fans, and welcome to Leafs Digest. I was riding a high at the end of regulation, and then now I'm kind of back down low again. I don't know. I feel like it's a good thing I'm not playing here because highs are a little too high and lows are a little too low as a fan watching this team. But goody, Game 5 of the playoffs. Leafs are up 3-1 going into this series. It's 3-2 now. Habs win this one 4-3 in overtime. What's the vibe like right now? Is this like typical Leafs Nation reaction after this one? Are we end of the world? That's it. We can't win a series. We can't win in the playoffs. Or do you feel okay going into Game 6?
I feel okay. I predicted game 6 after they broke the chances of them getting a clean sweep, which was my original prediction, but did not happen. So I said that I think 6 was the right amount because this is still the Leafs who show some hiccups. I don't think it's the same old Leafs where we're thinking we might get bounced. I'm really confident we don't. Carey Price scares me a bit. We allowed a 2-0 there at the end because of the ridiculous Galchenyuk turnover. I'm sure he feels terrible about that, but that's a game we won't get back. We're already on to the next, I'm sure, mentally, and I'm not worried about it. Philly, how do you feel?
Yeah, I'm not as worried about it either. I think this team is different than teams we've seen in the past, especially we've gone back to that veteran leadership over and over again and how they can change the mood of a team even within a game. And I think that that's kind of something that we can see even just coming back from 3-1 and not giving up and pushing right to the end. But honestly, like right from the beginning, you can't start down 2-0 like that. Whether those goals are good goals or not, whatever the people determine, you can't start 2-0 like that in an elimination game on home ice. It's different with no fans in the stands. I get that. The energy, the atmosphere isn't there, but the team still has to get up for the game. They have to be ready to play from that opening puck drop. Down 2-0 is hard to come back from. And one thing that I look at is like, Carey Price doesn't let in 3, 4, 5 goals that often. So to start down 2-0 in the first period, it's a daunting task to look at the other end. A guy like Carey Price who played in another, really, really good game tonight. And I have to say, right away, we have to score at least 3 goals tonight to win this one. And then you go down 3-1 and it's like, okay, now we have to score 4 to win this one. I just think you have to start better than that. The Leafs have had the Leafs have just had some weird like first periods and third periods, and their second periods have been the best, but you can't rely on your second period to be like, oh, we're going to score 2 or 3 this period to get us back into the game.
Yeah, you don't want to be in situations like that. You want to stay in the driver's seat from start to finish. The Leafs have had some issues with their third period. Here we were getting peppered early. Normally we've dominated out the gate, so it was really tough to see that. And then we have the character to catch up back up in the game. So that's something that we really need to be proud of here. However, you're right, Philly. We're not going to get anything done if we're starting like that. This is a momentum shifts, and if we get down that bad early and Carey Price is at the other end, our chances of recovering get a lot worse.
Yeah, and I especially look to like you think about if we advance past this series, which obviously you're taking it game by game and series by series, and you don't want to look too far ahead. But just as a fan, it's like Connor Hellebuck is probably a better goalie than Carey Price right now and is playing better than Carey Price. So you get down 2-0 on the Winnipeg Jets, it could be more difficult to even come back from that. So you don't want to get into a routine of, oh, we can always battle back and come from behind. It's great to be able to do it. They've had a couple games where they're down 1-0 early and they fight back. Tonight 2-0, they fight back. 3-1, they fight back. But still, it's like you don't want to be in that uphill battle right from the beginning.
Yeah, definitely not. But I'd say in the situation of Winnipeg, they're a better system. So they're going to be harder to score on for a number of reasons versus Montreal. I still think Carey Price is the better goalie over Hellebuck, but still, we're looking at the team as a total. So Montreal should be a lot easier to overcome. I get what you're saying because this won't fly in the second round. You need to be yourself, especially out the gate.
Yeah, and then like one thing that I think we've both kind of swept under the rug and not been as concerned about because this team has been winning, but Matthews and Marner have not been up to the standard that they need to be at. I know we've talked about Matthews' physicality and his defensive play and how well he's doing there, but this is a Rocket Richard winner who we've crowned as the best goal scorer in the NHL. And if this guy is not going to be able to score goals and in the playoffs when it matters the most and not be able to put up points on a consistent basis, then it's almost like that defensive stuff that he's continuing to bring to the table is almost just a wash.
I'm not upset with Matthews. We're still in a lead situation in this series. I still feel the momentum on the side of the Leafs. I don't think there's any need to hit the panic buttons at all. And they've done a good job for the most part of shutting down opposition. Mitch Marner at times has had some bad flyby defense. We've questioned him a lot in the playoffs for different reasons, but I still think these guys are going to come through big for us. They're just getting settled in. Matthews, I wouldn't say that he's getting a real visible all-star treatment. I know that they're on him and they're in his head. They're using plays too that are going to automatically default to him out there on the ice, but it hasn't seemed like they've really assigned anyone to terrorize him that much. So I wouldn't even give him too much excuses, but I'm also just not panicked in this situation. I know how good they are. I'm fully drinking that Kool-Aid. I think that they're a top pairing in the league. So I think that we'll see good things from them come. And if there's going to be great things, it's going to come in this next game because we got to move on in the series. We got to get past these Canadians. We're on a different level than them.
Yeah, I just think like it's right now. It's like it's time to wake up. Like if there's gonna be a time, it's gonna be right now because yeah, you've gotten by with getting some wins, and if you won tonight, that would be great. With getting, I think they both grabbed assists on that Hyman goal, but like tonight, especially, I look at Hyman was the best player on that line. And I think that that can't be the case moving forward. You can't consistently have Hyman being that, continuing to be that best player on that line when you have Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews playing alongside him. They Matthews and Marner are paid to be the best players and paid to drive this team, paid to be performers, not just in the regular season. So that success has to continue to transfer over into the playoffs here. And to have them go to sleep in an important game like this, in an elimination game, is not ideal for this team.
It's not ideal at all, but I'm not hitting the panic button because I don't think that they've been bad for us. I think they could be doing more, and I think they will be doing more. They're still relatively young guys, and getting out of the first round's been an issue for this team. You're right. If there's ever a time to grow and make the next step, it's right now, and I think we're going to see it, but that'll be determined in the next game. I think we're going to go to Montreal and get that done. But in the meantime, I'm not going to criticize it too much because these guys are still red hot and they're out there playing tough and diversifying their game. So it's going to come with some adjustments. And I've been happy with Matthews. Marner probably worthy of a little bit more criticism, in my opinion.
Yeah, and so I feel like I'm going to be Mr. Negativity in this pod almost, and maybe I am falling into the typical view of Leafs Nation after a loss like that in an elimination game, but like there's some things that I was just kind of curious about, and we haven't really seen it until tonight, and maybe it's just sticking out tonight more so because of the chance to eliminate the Habs, and then you fall down 3-1 like that, and it's a bit of a battle all the way through, but like we honestly, or the decision almost got bailed out by the fact that Muzzin scored that second goal, that point shot. Why wasn't Rasmus Sandin on the power play? Like I think Rasmus Sandin needs to continue to be on that power play, regardless of if you put Muzzin or Riley on that second one, whatever they feel is best. But I still think Rasmus Sandin is the best option for that first power play unit.
I'd agree with that. I mean, Muzzin played it great tonight, but typically I think that Sandin would be the guy that you'd want to go to just from his puck moving ability. He's on a different level with his hockey sense and IQ, and he moves his feet well with the puck. So I really like Sandin in that spot. We've gloated about him a lot in that spot and how he's deserved it. And clearly the management's taken notice as well because they've given him those reins every once in a while. But more consistency there for him would only help our power play.
Yeah, so the one thing I did briefly just touch on there, and I'm going to actually just hand out my Poppy Power Play of the Day right now. So for this Poppy Power Play of the Day, it's a bit of a simple one, and it's something that I'm going to tie back to a theme that I had actually 2 games ago when Rasmus Sandin did, in fact, score a power play goal with that slap shot from the point. But I'm going to give it to Jake Muzzin and his second, or his first goal of the game, the Leafs' second goal of the game, for the reason that the Leafs were one of the lowest scoring teams from defense in the NHL this season, and teams are not scared of the offensive threats from the point. Like they really look at that point and they see no offensive threat. And now we have goals from Rasmus Sandin, Morgan Riley, and Jake Muzzin in this series. And I think it's going to force teams to have a little bit more respect for what that point can bring in terms of not just shooting, but offensive ability in general. And I think that Leafs D needs to shoot more, because even like I look at that Muzzin goal, the first one that he scores, and then you go to the second one. Obviously, that's not a defensive goal. He's driving the net. He gets a tip off of a Galchenyuk shot that goes in. Like, that's not a defenseman goal. But it was a couple shifts later, Bogosian and Muzzin were just bombs away from the point, firing shots, and the Habs just couldn't keep up with it. There was rebounds coming everywhere. The offense was getting chances, and they hemmed the Habs in the zone because they weren't afraid to shoot. They continued to shoot the puck. And I think that that's something that the Leafs need to continue to do going forward here if they want a chance to win and close out this series against the Habs, is to continue offensive pressure from the point. Because if the point is just going to walk back and forth and make, oh, here, you have the puck. No, I'll have the puck now. No, you have the puck. And then nobody ever shoots, and they want the forwards to shoot all the time. It doesn't open as much offensive or create as much offensive threat that it could be generating if those guys just decide to shoot the puck.
When you shoot the puck from the point, it generates chaos in front of the net. And even if you don't directly get the goal, there's just great byproducts of doing that play. Even when in doubt, whip it to the front of the net. I mean, we're talking about our blue line here, but Kerfoot does a good job of that. If he's panicked, he throws it to the front of the net, and sometimes he'll get a wicked assist off of it. If we can get more of that kind of play and attitude from the blue line and Muzzin tonight, I mean, if Muzzin wasn't a good shooter, then there'd not be always a great point in having him in the lineup, because sometimes breaking out of our end, he struggles a little bit. At times, he hasn't been the perfect Muzzin, but we get reminded that he's got a cannon from the point. So if that can help get some more respect for the Leafs from that point shot, that'd be great. But we also need to just start going to it more routinely. I totally agree with you.
Yeah. Okay. So now we're going to look ahead to the next game a little bit here. Nick Foligno doesn't play again tonight. We literally predicted exactly this lineup. You keep the same lineup, switch Sandin in for Dermott, and then you just roll with it and see how it goes. I'm going to go full on here and just say, if Nick Foligno is even 75% ready for next game, he plays. He needs to play. Because personally, I don't think you can let this one go back to Game 7 in Toronto regardless, because it's a coin flip at that point. Anything can happen in Game 7. You really, really never know. Anything can happen in Game 7, and you do not want it to get to that point. You go to Montreal, and you close this one out. So Nick Foligno, I think even 75% of Nick Foligno needs to be in this lineup. I think even like tonight you look at it and you say, oh, it's a coin flip. He could play, he could not play. Like, oh, it doesn't really matter. You keep him out, fine, whatever. It didn't pan out. Leafs lose this game. But it wasn't like, oh my God, we lost 5-0. What the hell happened? Our lineup was terrible. I think, though, Game 6, you put him in. And my recommendation would be keep the second line as is. You put Foligno on that third line and you take Ilya Mikheyev out. I think Engvall has outplayed Mikheyev since he's been in this lineup. I think Simmons stays on the right wing. Leave the fourth line as is. Let them be. They haven't been a problem at all. Last game they played really well, actually generating a couple goals, generating some chances. They played well again tonight. They didn't cause anything against. Second line has been stellar. Like, even again tonight, aside from that Galchenyuk turnover in overtime leading to the 2-0 goal against, I think that second line has been the best line the Leafs have had consistently night in and night out. So you just leave them be. I think if you put Foligno in that third line, you create some more depth throughout the lineup, and you can also have that opportunity to flip Foligno and Hyman as the game goes on. We've seen a lot of creativity from Sheldon Keefe, willingness to move guys up and down the lineup. You saw times where Engvall was on that second line with Nylander, or Matthews and Nylander were playing together, just because your Keefe is not afraid to put guys together who are playing well. So if you put Foligno back in that lineup, start him on the third line, you create a good depth chart from 1 to 3, and then you have that opportunity to move Foligno to the first line and Hyman to the third if the game sees fit. And I see that as an opportunity to have Hyman go onto that third line and just completely drive that line, and Foligno go up to the first line and maybe create a more physical presence than Hyman's been, and just maybe let Matthews and Marner take over if that's the case and just bully some people around. Or he stays on the third line as the other scenario kind of, and just, this is Foligno I'm talking about again, and just absolutely physically bully some guys. But I think Mikheyev can come out because Foligno can kill penalties if it comes to it. You have other guys in this lineup who can play that penalty killing role. I would honestly be comfortable with like Kerfoot, Marner staying out there. Brooks, if need be, I wouldn't mind having Brooks out there. Spezza can take the draws, and then if you have Foligno going out there to kill penalties, Hyman killing penalties, like you have guys who can do that role better than Ilya, or equal to, if not better than Ilya Mikheyev on the penalty kill, and then they're going to bring more than the 5-on-5 unit or the 5-on-5 that Ilya Mikheyev has brought, and I think Engvall has played better than Mikheyev thus far.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a hot take, but I actually agree with you completely that if you were going to take a guy out, Mikheyev's been one of the guys who's just been consistently snake bitten
Yeah,
coming into the playoffs. I was saying, I don't know if you remember it, but that I pinned him to be a player that I thought was going to go and do some really good things for the Leafs, score important goals, because it seems like he's had a lot of built up momentum, and especially if people are keying onto the stars around him, he can maybe get some more opportunity. It hasn't really panned out like that at all. He's continued to be snake bitten. He looks clueless with the puck. His legs are way ahead of his brain at this point. I don't
yeah.
know what to say about Mikheyev. I think it'll be the first time he's ever been scratched as a Leaf if this happens. So hopefully that doesn't ruin his confidence and his relationship with the team. But Mikheyev's a good player. I think Engvall has come in and done everything you could potentially ask of him. I think Foligno plays for sure. 75%, we would take that any day with Foligno in our lineup. He's still going to go bully people like that,
Yeah.
and that's what we need him to do. And I like the fluidity of Sheldon Keefe too, because he knows that we got depth players, and when you have depth players, you can move them around. There's a lot of dynamic guys in the lineup, and Foligno's a guy that can do it all.
How important do you think it is to win this game 6 in Montreal? Like I'm seeing it as a must win, honestly.
It is a must win. I still think we're just the better team. I think if it goes to 7, our confidence is a little bit ruined. And at that point, we're just tempering maybe the whole expectation of the playoffs because Montreal's not a good team. Carey Price is looking like a brick wall like we thought he would. But I think it'd be really damaging from a confidence perspective. But I think if we didn't win, we'd probably win in 7. I just think we're the better team.
Mhm.
But I do want to get it done in 6.
Yeah, I think it's a must win in 6 because I I think the game 7 just scares me. Like regardless of how I think when you look at an NBA game and it's not necessarily like I'm not trying to throw a knock at an NBA, but like for the most part the better team wins. Even if it manages to get to game 7, the better team typically will just still come out on top. Like I there's probably a stat for it and I don't have that sitting in front of me right now, but I would say like if you're going to have number 1 against number 4 and they go to game 7, number 1's probably winning that series like 90% of the time, let's just say. Like it's like that they know that that's going to happen. In the NHL, it's much more of a coin flip. It goes to that game 7, anything can happen. Anything can happen. It's completely unpredictable. And I don't want it to get to that point. You had an opportunity to close it out at 3-1 going into game 5, and then you battle back, you send it to overtime, and then you lose pretty quickly off of kind of a terrible play, honestly. But if you go into game 6 and you lose that one, Montreal has now won 2 in a row. They're feeling hot. They won that one in overtime, which completely erases any of your momentum or excitement after that 3-1 comeback that you had. And going into game 7 back into your own barn, it's just going to almost be like PTSD of thinking about all the times that you've had to close out series in the past and couldn't get it done.
You know what? I think I'm just broken as a Leafs fan to the
Yeah,
point
honestly.
where I just don't have expectations. I mean, I do have real expectations because I look at the players in our lineup, but just I never get my hopes up too much anymore, Phil. It's just I've had the moment of rock bottom with the Leafs. We've been there. Last year was rock bottom with the Leafs. Remember they had that memo after the game where they're like, we don't even know what to tell you guys right now. We're
Yeah.
so sorry. Like, we don't want this either. It was just terrible because you can tell that the management feels cursed. And if we go to 7, there's just been such a hilarious narrative around the team in crunch moments that I'd be scared as well. But just from the sheer standpoint of skill, like we should be able to get it done in 6. And if that doesn't happen, then dear God, we better get it done in 7. And if that doesn't happen, then I'm almost just like typical Leafs. But
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't happen. I'm just saying, I with this team, I got to see it to believe it. I've been dying to see it, and I think it's finally going to happen. I don't want to jinx it, but in 6, it should have been tonight. It'll be that game, though.
All right, Goody. I think now it's time to get to our grades of the game. So I think we've been riding highs here. We've given A's out in the past couple games, A minuses here and there, and A minus isn't A and A minus aren't the best mark that you can possibly get. They're not the A plus, but you can't feel bad about an A minus. How does the mood change going into tonight? Like, are you still okay, or like, what's your grade of this game?
B minus. That's pretty high grade, I feel like, relative to what some people would have graded this game. But what ruined the game was an individual mistake.
Mm-hmm.
We still played great as a collective team, and the individual mistake is on Galchenyuk, not Campbell, who led in the goal. It was 2-0.
Yeah.
So this is like not really something that I felt reflected the whole group's effort, because we clawed back, tied it up, and I felt like we had momentum. It's unfortunate what happened, but I'm still giving us some credit for fighting back from a crummy start, not letting it dictate the narrative, and just, I feel like we're going into game 6 with a lot of heat versus the opposite of having them come back and beat us. It could have gone worse tonight. I still think the guys showed character. They're growing. We still got a young group, even though we want to be contenders, and we are. But yeah, I would give it the B minus. What about you?
I'm going to go a little bit better, and I'm going to give it a B. I think that the first period was not good. And then you look at that turnover that led to the final goal. Is, as you said, that's an individual mistake, not a team mistake. I do think, just to nitpick, when the puck is at the blue line like that, you're in an overtime scenario, and you've got two guys at the blue line there. Yes, Galchenyuk can't make that pass, but Morgan Rielly, I believe, was the defenseman. He can't be inside or at the same level parallel to those two Montreal forwards that are there. I think it's, especially in an overtime situation, he's got to be a little bit more aware to be able to step back outside of the blue line and not just expect that Galchenyuk is going to win that battle or put it into the corner or whatever the situation may be. There's two Montreal Canadiens flying out of the zone at the exact same level as him across the blue line. He has to have that awareness to be able to back up. Even if it makes it a 2-on-1, it's just a little bit more helpful to have that awareness of being there and being back to help Campbell a bit more. But that's just nitpicking the play. But I'd say that first period, not good. The overtime goal, not good. The second and third periods were great. And then you look at Campbell and net in that third period. Campbell had to just shut the door to give the Leafs a chance to even just send it to overtime, and he did that. He did exactly that. The defense stepped up. They played great defensively in the third period and even in the second period to just minimize chances and allow the offense to be able to go forward and give us a chance to go into overtime. The reason I'm going to go at a B though and not B plus or higher is you can't start slow like that. It is a killer, especially in the playoffs. The other team starts getting momentum, they start feeling hot, and then they are riding with a lead going throughout the rest of the game. And starting down 2-0 in the first period is more of a killer, I would say, than even being down 1-0 in the first and then 2-0 at some point in the second, just because you're looking at it right away as a bigger hill to climb earlier on in the game. And I think that start just has to be better.
Yeah, it's the opposite of killer instinct. You go into a game that is a must, keep the gas to the floor, and you don't do that out the gate, and you're facing a deficit when you're up against a guy like Carey Price too, who's going to be extra motivated to steal a game now. And ultimately, we actually did get through to him, but like I said, an individual mistake. So neither of us were too critical of the loss, despite it being pretty sad.
Yeah, well, Game 5 of the series. 3-2 now. Leafs still leading this one. Habs win this one 4-3 in overtime off a goal from Nick Suzuki on a 2-0 pretty early on into the first overtime game of the playoffs for the Leafs here. I know that the Toronto fan base is going to be absolutely haywire after this one. I was a little bit down. I got to be honest. I said it early, but I was a bit of a negative Nelly throughout this pod. But I still think that the Leafs are going to close this one out in 6. I think that there's some minor adjustments that have to be made. Foligno going back in the lineup, I would assume, is going to happen, and I think that will be a big difference for even just the energy levels that get brought into that game. And my prediction failed. I said Leafs in 5, but Goody, I'm riding with you here again. We'll go together on this. Leafs in 6, and we'll see everyone after the next game, Saturday, May 29th. In Montreal. Time says it's still to be determined. I'm going to assume it's at 7 o'clock, Saturday night, prime time, hockey night in Canada. We'll see everybody after the game.